Welcome to the Dork Forest. Jackie and her pals will never bore us. Shameless confessions
about our obsession
will make us laugh and smile. So let's explore the Dork Forest and dork out for a while.
Hi, Jackie Kashian here. You're listening to The Dork Forest. You know the websites, dorkforest.com, thedorkforest.com if you like a determiner. JackieKashian.com has everything. Both of my podcasts, all of the stand-up stuff, the new album, links to YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all the things. But so, I think, does dorkforest.com, where you can look at old videos of different shows. Anyway, if you want to support the show, tell people about the show, review it on iTunes, thumbs it up on Pandora or Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. I appreciate that. You can donate. You can donate monthly. PayPal lets you do that. You can also do my Venmo if you like. It's at Jackie Kashian, absolutely everywhere. And my email address is jackie@jackiekashian.com, and that's what the PayPal is. The PayPal link is on jackiekashian.com and dorkforest.com. And go to any of them. Thanks for listening. There's merch. There's stand-up. There's tour guide. You know, you can find out where I'm touring. This is getting long, so let's get into the show. Hi, Jackie Kashian. Slightly ill-lit in the Dork Forest in my garage with Lacey Artemis. Welcome to the show, Lacey Artemis of Artemis_creates and your podcast, hatcollecting.com, which I swear to God, Lacey, I thought it was going to be about hats. I was like, why aren't we dorking out about hats? And then I looked at it and I was like, no, it is not about hats.
It's a metaphor.
It turns out someone has an education. Well, good for you, Lacey Artemis. Congratulations. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah. So Twitter and Instagram, it's Artemis_creates.
Mm-hmm.
And then other places, it's artemiscreates.com or
Yes.
Artemis. Yeah, easy enough to find. They'll all be in the notes. Listen to a podcast. Look at a creation. But here's, I am slightly confused. Whenever someone wants to dork out about sports or music, I spend an hour playing catch up, and that's fine because it's super fun. But it seems to be the artistic angle of hockey.
Yes, essentially.
Yes. Well, this is actually because I don't know anything about hockey. I know that everyone can roller skate backwards, but that's all I know.
I figured you're probably not so big into sports ball.
I want all of your teams to win. This much we know. I hope it all works out for you. And but what? Okay, so what's your team? Do you have a particular? Let's just do hockey in general for a second. Do you have a hockey team that you enjoy?
Yes, I have. So the local team, I'm in Toronto, so I do follow the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Okay.
They're not always that good, but I do follow them.
I understand that is not I understand that is not a prerequisite to love a team. You're like,
no, it is not.
It's just geography. It seems to be just geography.
Yeah. And so for the listeners who maybe are just listening and can't see, I'm currently wearing a purple and white Hockey Fights Cancer jersey, which has the Maple Leafs logo on it.
Oh, what are their normal colors?
Blue and white.
Blue and white. Okay, so that is a special...
But my brand is purple, so yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's no reason to not. So blue and white is the team's color, and then they did a special charity event and created that?
So the cool thing is, it was a league-wide initiative, so I'm pretty sure every team in the whole league did purple jerseys one year. So...
Oh, wow.
I thought about getting one of these for my second team, which is the Minnesota Wild, actually.
Okay.
Close to your hometown.
Sure. It's is there a team in Wisconsin? There used to be the Admirals.
I believe so. There might be like a minor league team, but there's not any NHL teams in there, I don't think.
Fair enough. And so have you seen a lot of live hockey? We can get to the art in a second. I just need some basic hockey talk.
I have not been to an NHL game, but I have been to a minor league game.
Oh, which is sometimes kind of better because you can get closer and you can see people really being athletic up close where you're like, holy smokes. Yeah. Did you ever play hockey?
I played roller hockey when I was a teenager. I was not very good.
But did you enjoy it?
Yes.
There you go. Now, okay, so we got the basics. Hockey, Hockey is a sport played on ice.
Mhm.
Two teams. You try to get the puck in the opposite person's goal,
Mhm.
and there is it sort of like soccer where there's or
Football.
football in parlance, where people have zones that they play, or is it a
Yes.
big free for all? Oh, it's zones.
Yes, there is a neutral zone, which is the like middle third of the ice, and then there's the offensive and the defensive zone for each team.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So so now that I have the basics of exactly what is happening in a hockey game, let us discuss the art. Hold for it. What's your favorite thing about hockey? I think this is one of your favorite things, right?
So yeah, as I was saying in my initial email to you, the art was actually what like really hooked me into hockey as a kid. Like I did enjoy watching it for the action as well, but in particular, and anyone who's listening or watching this who is more familiar with hockey, so Trevor Kidd on the Calgary Flames at the time in the mid '90s had these pads that had this really like. It was like a flamey design, but it's not what you would expect. It was kind of like a yellowish orange or an orangish yellow, and then like kind of a deeper orange. And just something about that particular color combination and the way it looked just caught my attention. And I kind of upset. Yeah.
Yeah, and these are literally the pads that the hockey player Trevor Kidd was wearing.
Yeah.
On his knees and elbows or...
Yeah, I can put up a picture on the screen.
Sure, let's put up a picture on the screen.
Hold on a second here. Let me just dig that
Lacey
up.
Artemis, learning how to use the sharing app in Zoom.
Yes.
And so if you want to go to youtube.com/thedorkforest.
Yeah, so
you too will be able to see these images.
So
there we go.
Zoom in. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, you can.
So yeah. So they're not exactly like pure yellow. There's like a orangish tint to them, I'd think. And the flames kind of looking like they're bubbling up from the ice, essentially, which is kind of ironic in a sense.
That is kind of ironic. So these are, he could pick whatever he wants for the the pads. People could, because you just have to wear the uniform like helmet and jersey, and then you could do whatever you want with the pads.
You can do almost anything that you want.
Oh, yeah? Well, I'm sure Black Lives Matter, some white supremacists would lose their shit. So,
yeah. Well, even in simpler things, because there was a goaltender in the 80s who wanted to put Pepsi cans on his pads. He had a sponsorship deal.
Oh,
and the league said, no, we're not going to let that
we're
happen.
selling our own advertising. Please try not to sell advertising on your person. Yeah, so you could do designs, but you can't do sort of logos and stuff like that.
Yeah, on the masks, there's a bit more freedom for that sort of thing, and I can show some pictures of that as well.
Okay.
I gathered a ton of stuff, and I'm realizing I'm probably not going to get to show most of it just because of how long it sort of takes. But
there is a time constraint. So, what was there? Is this something that just sort of happened in the 90s, where people are like, I am going to put my fun thing on the pads because. Sort of like decorating your cubicle in a workplace. Like you can,
Yeah, the pads. So another picture I can bring up for people who are completely unversed in this stuff. I feel like, so let me just do this real quick.
It's a real clock eater.
So this is what pads used to look like. They were just these like plain leather things stuffed with like horsehair, I think it was.
Wow.
And
that is an old-timey looking pad. And they also look super used, but they are sort of yellowish as well.
Yeah, and there's been modern kind of reimaginings of these because the way that they make pads is different now, and like that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother episode.
Well, because of technology and because they're supposed to protect people from throwing a puck at them at 1,000,000 miles an hour, right? Yeah,
exactly. So that's how they used to look, and so. Goalies would wear those, and there's also the masks, which also used to be much more simplistic and basic. And
Jason-y? Are they like a Jason-y kind of mask?
They used to be back in the 70s, and I do have a picture that I could share of that as well.
Sure.
I just have to go and dig that out.
Sure.
Like I said, I did far too much prep today.
Well, what I love about people who do homework to be on the Dork Forest, my job, just sit here and soak it up. Whoa.
Yeah, so these are some examples. I'm not sure if they were all actually worn in the NHL, but I know some of them definitely have like real team logos on them. So,
Okay.
but those are very Jason-y looking masks.
They sure are. And so these are the masks. And this is all just goalie outfit, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the players don't get to do anything fun like this. It's all the domain of the goaltenders.
Oh, really? So the rest of the team, they're like, you don't have to sit in that one spot and try to block pucks. You just wear the outfit that we gave you.
Yeah, but
Okay.
then so I can show sort of the evolution just quickly of how that sort of, it went from that to something kind of like this. So
Okay. Oh,
now you've got,
yeah,
like,
just kind of a football helmet with
yeah,
a,
and
with
then
a
it's got
cage.
a cage. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I actually have the next one I'll show you. This something a little fun fact.
Yep.
This wire pattern on this protective cage is called a cat eye cage because the front area there has those two kind of curved gaps that almost kind of look like cat eyes.
Yeah.
So that's the most common style these days, but there are some other styles as well that have come and gone.
Those eye holes look big enough for a puck to go through. I mean, that would be disappointing.
They are just barely small enough, but there has been a couple of instances where a shot has been hard enough that it has gotten lodged in that hole and actually enough got through to cause like a cut and then bleeding on the goalie.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it's a dangerous game is what I'm hearing there. And so
Yeah.
so
Here,
yeah, so they're
I'll
no
just show 'em.
longer. Yeah.
Yeah, this is kind of what they look like these days. They're very like airbrushed and like nice shiny silver bars
That is a van. That is a if it's rocking, don't come and knock it. That is very
Yes.
much. It looks like
Yeah.
a Venom mask, kind of with the
yeah,
teeth.
actually,
and,
I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I've got a folder that I call just classic designs because there's a debate in the hockey world, especially amongst people who consider themselves goalie fans, because we're the quirky ones. Goalies are the weirdos in hockey.
Okay.
They're known for being very eccentric, and that's kind of, I think, part of how this all evolved. But yeah, there's a lot of kind of cleaner designs and simpler designs that a lot of people say that's what's best because it's not distracting, it's not too busy.
Right.
But I think they're a little bit more boring personally, and I'm kind of, I think, in maybe the minority on that.
Well, and it's interesting because the fact that there are just goalie fans, they're just like this specific job, right, on the team, because they are kind of their own. They're very unique, and I wonder if like there's goalie bars. It's like no, we're just gonna go hang out with the other goalies, and but what are your favorite? Do you have color schemes that you like? Do you like it when because you like it when they're busy? You said, right?
I do like the more artistic, more detailed ones. So I guess I can show some of those. Let's see what I can bring up
very
here.
video oriented. Go to youtube.com. Look up the Dork Forest.
I will try. Like I'm gonna try to describe things a little bit because I know how annoying it can be to try to listen to something where they're like, oh, look at this.
It's just like it's an audio format, but we do have the video and we use it. So that's cool.
Okay, where did that go? I'm just trying to find. Oh, there it is. Okay. So this is a pretty cool idea here. This one actually glows in the dark.
That's
which is another
interesting.
funky. Yeah. So this This belonged to a goalie named Ben Bishop when he played with the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a Tron-inspired design. So that's kind of nerdy in its own right.
Yeah.
And it's done with special kind of paint. So you can see on the right side of the frame that all these, it's got the logo there is the team's lightning bolt logo. And then like a number 30 in Tron font at the bottom there, because that's the number that he wore. And so when it's lights out, you've just got this kind of like glowing greenish lines there. And because like when the players first kind of come onto the ice before the game actually starts, usually the lights are out for the most part. And so it's dim. So that's how you can actually see this stuff.
Oh, that's really cool then.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what he wanted is he wanted that to, and and so the current goalie mask that the goalies are using is that cage mask, the sort of the to block.
Yeah.
But for a long time they did have that Jason mask,
Hmm.
which must be harder to see out of. I mean, for the game.
Those ones, because they had literal just like eye holes in them.
Yeah.
So like there was no obstruction at all. It's kind of like wearing like a Halloween mask with just big eye holes, I would imagine.
Yeah, but I would think that there would be less, that it would be harder to see out of, just because when you do put a Halloween mask on, they are little. They are not like your peripheral vision can be screwed with, but a
This is
cage,
true.
you could kind of work around sort of the helmeting kind of part.
The thing with it is, because I actually do have, it's currently disassembled, but I do have a road hockey mask here.
Okay.
The cage is apart, and I had painted it all white because I was actually going to attempt to do my own paint design on this, but I haven't gotten to that yet. But the thing with this is, and like when I put it in front of my face now, because you have the two different eyes seeing slightly differently, so you can actually see the bars still. So right now when I'm looking forward, I can almost see like a little square right in the center of my vision from the overlap of each eye seeing those bars. So there's a little bit of visual obscuring still, but maybe not quite as much.
Right, and I'm sure there's, your eyes tend to compensate for that, and then all of a sudden you can see better through it, and and they're always going to want something to protect their face. Yeah, because
Yes,
there's a
absolutely.
hockey puck coming at you at 180 miles an hour or whatever.
Yep.
So what? So the one that you have, you've painted it white.
Yeah.
What do you think? What are you going to do? What are you thinking about?
I haven't decided. It's kind of like trying to pick tattoos. Like I have lots of different ideas and I just have to like pick something and go with it. And I have to try to decide like what kind of paint I'm going to use, because like that's I think that's acrylic paint on there, and so I guess I'd have to use an acrylic paint on top of it as well. And there's still some spots that probably need a little bit more primer, but I was thinking about doing something kind of the purple and white branding that I'm so fond of, but I haven't fully decided yet.
How are your art skills? I mean, can you draw, like if you wanted to do a Prince themed one? He was into purple.
Yes, he was. I'm decent. I do more graphic design these days, but I did used to draw on everything when I was younger, and I'm sure I could get that muscle memory back somewhat quickly.
Yeah, and I wonder if graphic design, you could do it in some sort of program and then superimpose it. I mean, you could draw it on the computer and then superimpose it and trace it.
It's funny that you mentioned that. Fun little fact here. So one of my cousins actually works for one of the companies that makes goalie equipment. Okay. So I went to her public Instagram just to make sure that I'm not going to get anybody in trouble.
And let me tell you something. There's no more Canadian words than my cousin works at a goalie equipment company. It's a very Canadian statement. Go ahead.
Yes. So another quick screen share here. So she actually works in I think this this is an Adobe Acrobat, I think, but she works in like one of the design programs, and she actually designs the pads for some of the goalies that are in the National Hockey League. Cool. So this here, you're seeing Jonathan Quick and Cal Peterson, who both play for the Los Angeles Kings.
Oh, there's an LA team. Well, that's nice.
There's actually 3 teams in California.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Hockey. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the Kings used to have a purple and gold color scheme. So this is now their retro kind of look. And these were kind of design concepts that she created for those 2 goalies that would have been used at some point.
What are the different, like the thing in the middle that looks like a seating chart for a Delta? What is that? Just the shin guards?
Oh, that's
just the side view. Okay.
Yeah. I can just give me a second here. I'll bring up another picture that will make that a little bit easier for you there.
No worries. worries. It's yeah. So
there we go.
So she did exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah, so this thing there's a picture. Sorry, I realize I'm not describing things as much as I intended to.
I'm also talking over you, so feel free to push your agenda, which I totally appreciate.
So we're currently looking at a photo, a back view from behind of a goalie pad, and it's mostly white. And you can see the straps that go around the back of the goalie's leg, and then there's this kind of piece of like square foam kind of sticking out, and I've circled it in the picture, and that's the piece that when the goalies drop down, that's where their knee lands, on that little pad there. And there's a name for it, but I forget what it's actually called now.
Knee pad. I love it.
Yeah. So, because like there's when I was preparing for this, I realized like there's the mask art, there's the pad art, and there's even an art of the actual position, like the techniques and the positioning that they play. So there's so much that I could show you, and I'm really realizing how limited I am in the time.
Right. Tell me you don't have to show me that. Just tell me what that is. What is it?
The pad parts, you mean?
No, the art of the way they're positioned.
Right.
Are you talking about like if you're still gonna show me a picture? Go for it. Let's see it.
Yeah, it's just a little bit easier that way. So this is basically a picture of something called the butterfly. That's what they've named the position. You can kind of see that it looks a bit butterfly shaped roughly. So you've got the goalie standing with the legs kind of knees in the middle and the feet out at the sides, so creating a downward diagonal angle, and then one glove up on one corner and one glove in the other corner, and it creates a loose butterfly shape there. And that's kind of the preferred modern technique because it allows them to more easily and quickly kind of get up and down and move around. Then you can see there's like a more simple design here on this equipment. But do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I'm curious. Why wouldn't you stand like that if you were going to have to jump around? I mean, are there other ways that they stand?
So, quick little history lesson.
Yes, please.
I guess about 20, 30 years ago, for a while, most of the shots didn't come, like, they didn't need to go down as much because the shots weren't, like, coming, I think they weren't coming as high as much. They were kind of more, like, along the ice. So the goalies did something called the stand-up position where they would mostly just kind of, like, swat the pucks away and, like, kick at them. And they would only go down if they had to. Whereas now, it's like I think something like there's a high percentage of goals that are scored along the ice. So one of the goalies developed this position so that it would be easier to get down quickly and cover the ice so that that reduce the chance of being scored on. So it was a complete shift in how they played.
So the game changed, which is what created that stance. Because previously they just stood there and they were like, jump, throw, this type of sort of more like soccer, more like football.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. Well, so when they design their pads, I'm sure they're like, well, I'm going to be standing like that. How could that, maybe when my knees are together, it makes the sign of the cross, and I all of a sudden am a Jesus hockey player. So, or whatever, right? Yeah.
And the thing with, like, I'll show another picture here to illustrate some part of this. So this picture is another picture of a pair of goalie pads from the side facing towards the goalie. And they have kind of diagonal green and like medium and dark green stripes and kind of like a forest pattern.
It's a landscape.
Yes.
Yes.
And so when the goalies go down, depending on the way that the pattern on their pad is done, it can create like a secondary pattern when they're down. So it's there's like layers to this.
Yeah. It said Bauer on it. Whose pads were those? Do you remember?
Those ones I don't actually know. That's not one of the ones from my cousin's Instagram.
Fair enough. It's but I like that they're allowed to do it, right? That they can
and I suppose I should maybe show some more of the mask art because I think there's a little bit more kind of going on there. I can show some some of the so-called classic designs that people talk about. And so this one here, this is a goalie named Ed Belfor. He's currently retired. I shouldn't say currently because I don't think he's going to be coming back, but he is retired.
He's come back in his 50s. That's where it's all going to come together.
Yeah, and I guess he earned the nickname Eddie the Eagle. So his mask here, he's got an eagle painted on it both sides, and there's like a little wishbone type thing on the chin area of the mask. And so something that I was going to talk briefly about with the masks is that you can, if you're just listening, you can kind of visualize if you're imagining wearing like a helmet that kind of goes not only on top of your head, but beside, like around your ears and like kind of below your chin. So there's like sections of it. So there's different, you can have the design kind of like go up and over. You can have it go from one side, wrap around kind of the center. You can have it be asymmetrical. There's like all kinds of different options. So this one's a symmetrical design. Let's see here. This is another kind of symmetrical design. This is Martin Brodeur, who's like one of the most famous goalies in NHL history. And he was playing for the Devils, so he's got a helmet that is black and with like red and white kind of accents. So it looks a little bit like fire, but not quite.
And a little bit like a crescent wrench. It's on top of it. But it's like a devil's horn, I think, is what's happening on the top of his head. Yeah,
that's like a modified version of the team's logo. Yeah.
Are any of these guys painting it themselves, or are they just having it? I wonder if there's any sort of history of the helmet. Like, is there a book that if someone wanted to read
yes. I don't know about a book, but there's definitely a history. And if you go searching on YouTube, you can certainly find that.
All right.
But I just realized where...
History of decorating your hockey helmet. I'm sure kids are psyched about it now, where they're just like, as they come up, they're just like, I want to be the goalie so that I can paint a Pokemon on my helmet and live my life entirely as a Pokemon.
So another one I'll show here really quickly, and I'll try to be good at describing it. So there's a mask designer who does a lot of masks for a lot of goalies. His name is, he goes by the brand name, I guess, Dave Art. And he's a controversial figure because he tends to do more detailed, more artistic designs with the like neon and like glow in the dark and stuff. Okay. And some people hate it and some people love it. And I happen to like it, but I can understand to some people this is too busy. And so the design that we're looking at right now has a lighthouse, and kind of like the light coming out of the lighthouse is like almost like a sunburst kind of pattern.
Is Dave Art, on the top, do you think he started as a graffiti artist? Because this has that kind of cool vibe to it.
He does a lot of different styles, but it's quite possible that he has some background in that. Yeah.
So this is the Islanders lighthouse. So Long Island.
Yeah. They do play on Long Island. Yeah.
And so there are sort of famous artists that you can sort of hire for this job.
Yeah, there are some artists who have gained a reputation. It's kind of like with my cousin doing the designs. Like they're so I was saying in my email as well that there's a company called Brian's, and they only do pads, but they do completely custom pad designs. So you can ask them for basically anything, and like the Pepsi cans, for example, and they can make it happen. Right. Whereas most of the other companies that make the pads, they have like, they come up with like standard patterns, and then they can change the accent colors on those patterns, and that's kind of the choices that you're allowed to make.
Okay. Yeah. That's the extent of it.
Yeah.
Wow. All right.
I know, you never thought there was this much to sports ball.
Right. Well, I mean, do they usually go with the colors of the team, or can they be anything that they want to be?
They usually go with the colors of the team, but what happens when goalies get traded is that usually they can't get new pads in the new team colors right away. So if they're playing on a team with green colors and they get traded to a team with yellow colors, then they still have the green pads temporarily.
Oh, that's interesting. You would think it would be a bigger deal where you'd be like the people who own the teams would be like, please do not wear your Green Bay Packer colors while you're playing for the Chicago Bears or whatever the hell. And yeah.
But so something I'll show you here to kind of illustrate a couple of points. So this is a picture of a goalie named Marc-Andre Fleury, aka his nickname is Flower.
Okay.
And he's wearing gold pads here. So that's another thing. They can do them in kind of non-standard colors.
Mhm.
And so you can actually see there's a bit of a like a gleam to them, I guess.
Yeah, a little shiny.
Yeah, and you can see, I'll try to zoom in a little bit here so that you can kind of see it better. So you see how there's kind of like lines kind of running along the surface of the pads? Yeah, so those are the kind of the accents, so that he could, if he wanted to, he could get those made like black or white or red or whatever color, but you can also choose to just have them plain, so it's just the base color of the pad.
It looks like they're like his mom made it and they sewed they look like you know, like big sewing, like the stitches where the stitches aren't too close. Yeah. So what would he like? He could do anything with those, right? Because he could, if he wanted to, like put the names of all of his children on each of the on each shin pad, or his nieces and nephews, or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just gonna try and find one other one quickly here that I wanted to show.
Here's Gordy, by the way, who desperately wanted
Gordy
to sit on my lap because he knows that there might be a treat on this table. But he's getting scritches. That's what he's getting. While you look for another. Oh, there we go. Look at this.
Yeah. So this is actually like a modern redo of an old design. So there's a goalie in the 90s and the 2000s named Sean Burke. Was one of the first goalies, along with Trevor Kidd, to have the pads with like an actual pattern design style on them.
Okay.
And so he had like a whale tail pattern because he played for the Whalers.
Oh, that makes sense.
They don't exist anymore, but more recently the team, they moved to Carolina, and so sometimes the Carolina team now does like a throwback night where they'll dress like the Whalers even though they're still Carolina.
Okay.
And so one of their goalies got this set of retro pads made. So for the people that are just listening, if you're still listening,
they're still listening. They're just
okay. So we've got the pads here, and they're mostly green at the top, and then there's like a white wave kind of line and a whale tail, and then they're blue at the very bottom. So it kind of looks like a whale is just like dived into the water at the bottom of the pads.
It does. It does look like the whale has dived into the water. It's that's kind of cool. It's and it's not all graffiti looking. It's real graphic designery kind of vibe, which is nice.
Yeah, that's the thing, because like this does range. Actually, here I can show you a really great example of the mismatch of equipment. This is what I was looking for a second ago. So here, this goalie doesn't look very happy right now. But this is he was traded from a team that wears red to a team that wears green, and so he's got these red, blue, and yellow pads with a green and black jersey.
Yeah.
So it's all kinds of stuff going on here.
And a red helmet.
With a panther design on it from his old team.
Wow. This is so interesting that the league wouldn't be like, no, let's get him some new pads and stuff. But I suppose at a certain point your pads are comfortable, right? You've worn them in. Same with your helmet, and you're just like, you get me a new helmet, I don't know if I'll play as well while I break in my helmet. Or when I break in my pads, it's gonna. You don't want the pads to, even if they're the same brand, they gotta bend around their bodies and stuff.
Yeah. So something that some goalies do is they have like a game set of pads and a practice set of pads. So their practice pads will have all of the like puck marks on them, the black streaks and things, and then their game pads will be nice and clean and fresh looking. And they kind of do that because there's a theory in the goalie world. Some goalies have kind of said, like, I don't think that really matters. But there's a theory that if their pads are completely white, because the ice is also white, that it makes it harder for the shooters to tell where the pad ends and the empty space begins.
Okay.
So it's kind of a deceptive technique for them. Whereas if you have very colored pads, it's very clear where the pad ends and the net that you're shooting at begins.
Right.
Yeah.
It is, what are, like, the history of goalies? Like, what do you know about the goalie situation?
I don't know as much about the like super old history of hockey as I probably should. I do know that there used to be an extra skater on the ice during games. There was 5 like skaters and then the goalie, as opposed to, or 6 skaters and the goalie. And now there's only 5 skaters and the goalie. And the goalies used to not wear masks at all. I know that much. But then they would, get their faces broken by pucks, and so they're like, oh, we should probably do something about that.
Yeah. Let's.
And they had the very primitive, just like leather pads, and they would wear like a leather baseball glove before they had their own gloves that they got designed. And it's been, because the NHL has been going for a little over 100 years now, so it's been lots of time for evolution and I'm just thinking if there's any other stuff to. There's currently 32 teams. They just this year actually just added a new team called the Seattle Kraken, named after a sea monster.
Nice. And, which is good, because they weren't just randomly just naming them after like whatever factory happened to be in town or something like that, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Do you have any questions at this point? Any more questions?
I have a question, which is why? Sure. What do you? Are there Reddit boards, or is there stuff that? What do you talk about with other goalie fans?
Well, because there's like there's the mask art, there's the pad art, there's like the saves that they make. Sometimes they make really flashy saves, and so there's like, oh, did you see this? This is robbery. This is the save of the year. Glove saves are a big thing, and there's a thing called the windmill glove save, which you can kind of imagine. It's like they're just flailing their arm out and catching the puck.
So wait, so like there's just there's talk of like the game, it's like how they play the game.
Yeah.
Like the saves and stuff. So who are your favorite? What are your favorite saves that you have talked about?
I mean, I definitely grew up on the glove saves. That's kind of the meat and potatoes of goalie saves. And then there is the 2-pad stack, which is not so much a thing anymore because of the butterfly.
What is that?
It's not as. So I can actually show you what that is.
A 2-pad stack?
Yes.
Pardon me while I go get a stack of pads and throw it at the puck? No, that can't be right.
Yeah. So I'll show you a classic. So this is a 2-pad stack. It's when they're basically laying on the ice on their side and they just have their legs kind of out in the air and they're just trying to like block the net.
Okay.
It's a desperation save usually.
Okay. Because there's not a lot of control there. You're just sort of hoping that your body is big enough to block the net. Is what the deal is there. Are they wearing any pads underneath their stomach?
Yes, they wear a chest protector that also, it's like shoulders and chest and like some of their like abdomen, but I think there are some small gaps here and there that they can kind of get.
But at least the major areas are protected from like somebody hitting them square on the chest and then all of a sudden they've broken a sternum or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you talk about sort of your favorite. What are your favorite things that goalies have done? Let's talk about that.
So there are a few goalies who've actually scored goals, which is really hard to do because there's another fun fact. Goalies are not allowed to cross center ice. And this is, there's a reason for this. I don't remember exactly why, but there's a famous video of a goalie named Patrick Roy, which is spelled R-O-Y. It's spelled Roy, but it's pronounced Roy because it's French.
Okay.
And there's a video of him skating to center ice and actually deking around a player, which is another thing goalies rarely do.
What's deking?
Oh, yes. Now I'm starting to get into actual sports ball terms.
That's great. I need something. I don't know, because I've never heard of that. What is that?
Deking is just means just kind of like stick handling the puck to try and like avoid the other player so they can't get it.
Okay, so the actual game itself, where you're just like where like in basketball, you would sort of it'd be the
Dribbling,
the dribble.
kind of, yeah.
Okay. So it's
Yeah.
called deking.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this guy Patrick Raw.
Wah. Like W.
Okay,
Yeah.
Patrick Waugh, he actually leaves the net and
Mhm.
starts playing hockey in the middle of the court.
Yeah. He was like, I'm tired of staying at home. I want to have some fun. So he went out and went for a joy skate.
And then what happened?
Yeah, he got a penalty because he's not allowed to do that.
Oh, there you go. That's a famous thing that he got a penalty.
Yeah. And I was saying with scoring the goals, that's a thing that there's two ways that goalies can get credited with goals. They can actually shoot the puck and it goes into the net, like directly, or they can shoot it and it gets missed, but somebody else maybe like knocks it in.
Mhm.
Like the last player from the other, if a player from the other team puts the puck in their own net, then the last person from the other team that touched it gets credit for that goal.
Oh, okay.
So that's how goalies have gotten credit for a couple of goals. But if you look up, I think the last time it happened was a few years ago, but the goalie from the Nashville Predators, I think, was the last goalie to score an actual goal off of his stick into the net. And it's always a thing that we celebrate because it doesn't happen very often. And it almost happened in the All-Star game a few years back. There's a goalie there he's got one in the like regular season, but he tried to get it in the All-Star game, and that would have been like epic because that's never happened and it probably never will happen again.
Right. It's
and they have goalie races at the All-Star game too, sometimes.
really so.
Yeah.
It's the goalies just like a skate off.
Yeah, because they have fastest skater competitions with like the skaters, but the goalies are wearing their full gear and they're just like they're hustling around the rink.
Oh, so it is absurd looking, and people are
Yes,
like, that's wacky, and well, good for
Yes.
them. Good for them. It's so is there with famous people and sports people are like, well, this is the best looking goalie in the league. This is the best athlete. All around athlete. Is there some of that talk, and who are those people?
There is talk about who the GOATs, the greatest of all time, people who are playing, or like, some of the goalies that are still playing, like, are they going to make it to the Hall of Fame or not? And there's, like with forwards and defensemen, there's kind of up and coming goaltenders. There's guys that are established. There's veterans who are like, oh, are they going to retire soon?
Yeah.
Or, they're chasing a cup because they haven't won the championship yet and they're hoping to get one before they retire.
Right.
There's a lot of names I could throw at you. I don't know if I should do that.
Well, if anybody's listening that loves hockey, they would like to hear it. Because that's what's happening is people are listening because they enjoy hockey. And
right.
And
yes.
I will not be retaining any of these names. But I will one day, I'll be like, well, Patrick Waugh. And then I'll just be sitting around having a beverage, an adult beverage in this case is my coffee. And I'll be at a party having a cup of coffee and I'll wow people. I'll wow people with my knowledge of goalie talk. And
yeah, I should be like, that time Patrick Waugh deked around Steve Yzerman at center ice and got a penalty.
Exactly, right?
Yeah. So yeah, some of the names, there's a few guys that have retired recently that are pretty popular. Well, there's a guy named Roberto Luongo, who everyone just calls Lou because he's got a good personality.
Mm-hmm.
And he played, I think, for only 3 teams in his career. He played a long time. He never quite got his cup, but he came close once or twice. And there's a guy named Henrik Lundqvist who I believe just retired. He's another guy, came really close, but didn't quite get it. And now he's just little too old and calling it a day. There's a guy named Ben Bishop who just retired, unfortunately because of injuries, not because of age necessarily. He was one of the best goalies in the league for, like, this is the thing with goalies. So goalies are kind of voodoo. They, if you hang out in hockey circles, you'll hear this before long.
Okay.
Goalies are voodoo because they can be very hot and cold. They can have a season where they're the best in the league, and then the next season they might as well be in the minors because they can't stop a beach ball, as the saying goes. And there's some goalies that have been jokes where it's like, okay, one season they can't beat them, the next season they're complete trash, and then the next season they're great again, and it just keeps alternating. There's a guy named Dominic.
Yeah, that there's this lack of this unevenness in the game, where you would think it would be, they would be good for the whole time, and but so what do you think creates that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, because goaltending is a very mental position. It's a very physical position, obviously, but it's a very mental position, because if the goalie's head is not in, like, you're choosing to stand in front of being shot at 100 miles per hour, this, like, vulcanized rubber.
Right.
Which is why we say goalies are a little bit weird, because they're willing to do that, and it excites them. They're eager to do it.
Right.
And so goalies really have to be focused, because they have to track the puck, which is moving very, very quickly all over the place. It can deflect, it can be screened, and they can, if they make just the slightest miscalculation in their movement, they get scored on, and that's not good.
Right.
So if they're like, there's been times where if like a goalie's family member passes away or something, that obviously that's going to be distracting, and it'll affect them for like a season.
That's interesting, because in other sports they don't really talk about the emotions of the catcher, right? Or the emotions of, but you would think, I mean, that being a quarterback of American football, right? That should be a mind game as well, right? But maybe it isn't. Maybe the goalie's mind game is super different, just because of you're standing there as a human target to something, and that is interesting. So,
and sometimes they do have to literally stand there for 10-15 minutes straight without really, like, not really facing many shots. If their team's really good, then they're not going to be having as much shots at them. So there's another thing about starting and backup goaltenders. That's another thing in the goalie world, because of the demands on the body of playing the position. Goalies can't really play like every game in the season anymore. Like how
many games are there?
Starting goalies typically play kind of like 50 to 65 games, provided they don't.
How many games are in a season? Is it like baseball?
No, baseball is ridiculous. Hockey has 82 games in a season.
What?
It's still a lot.
That's so many games. And are they playing every other day? How many?
Sometimes.
Wow.
Sometimes whenever there's like back-to-back games, that's usually when the starter and the backup will split the games.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is that with the backup goalies, that's a thing that gets talked about, that they have to have a different mindset, because they're seeing a lot less playing time. They sometimes just have to get thrown in, and they just have to be able to turn it on and play and be good.
Yeah.
Whereas the starter's just always in there and always kind of in that groove.
Yeah. Because they're just more used to it, and they're just that's crazy. Is there a Wayne Gretzky level goalie? Like, Wayne Gretzky is a name that is so famous that I, Jackie Cation, have heard of Wayne Gretzky. So
I would say people, I think of the modern era, sort of the last like 30 years, I would say Martin Brodeur is probably the closest.
Brodeur.
He came up earlier. He's got a couple of records that are probably never going to be broken, like Wayne Gretzky.
Really? Like records and saves.
So Martin Brodeur has won, I believe it's 694 regular season games, which is, I think that's like a couple hundred higher or something like that than the next highest guy.
What?
Because he was kind of in a lot of sports they'll say, some people are just like they're kind of like aliens, they're like genetic freaks. So Martin Brodeur was a goalie who actually did play like 60 to 70 games a season pretty regularly. So that's kind of how he was able to amass a lot more stats. And so there's the thing called a shutout, which is when you don't allow any goals in a game.
Okay.
And Martin Brodeur did that 125 times in his career.
What?
And the next, I don't have the numbers right in front of me because I wasn't prepared to talk this stuff, but the next closest person I would say is probably like half that at most. And goalies these days they don't play nearly as much, so it's very unlikely that those numbers are going to be reached by other goaltenders.
Right. They've essentially decided that maybe Martin Brodeur, whose body might be just a a gelatinous pile of goo at this point, just because he's been beaten to death. But because that's so many games. Yeah. So what are the stats have got to be like how many shutouts you did, how many games you played.
There's a thing called save percentage, which is another important. That is the way that you get that number is you divide the number of shots that you faced, or the number of shots you faced and the number of them that you stopped, and that'll give you a number like, for instance, 0.95, 95%.
Yeah.
So 95% of the shots you face, you stopped. The other 5% went in.
Right.
And these days, kind of the average level of a decent goaltender, I think, is like about 0.91 or thereabouts.
They can stop 90% of the shots taken.
Yeah.
They can.
Yeah.
Wow.
And if you're below that, then you're bad and you don't belong in the NHL.
Right. Well, in the NHL, the scoring in hockey is it 1 point per goal?
Yes.
So are they low scoring games? Like it'll be like, hey, it was 4-5. It was a tight game, and this type of thing, or.
Yeah, the games, we went through a thing called the dead puck era, which thankfully is over. You can probably guess what that is based on the name of it. It was a time when there was a lot of clutching and grabbing, as it's called, players holding onto each other and lots of obstruction. And so there was a lot less scoring opportunities, and the goalies also wore ridiculous, so much padding, more than they do right now. And so as you said, the game changed, and so they had to change the rules so that you can't clutch and grab anymore, and they made the goalies shrink the pads. So the scoring went back up.
Okay, and so yeah, that's something about hockey that's famous, is that they're constantly beating each other up. Right? Don't they?
Oh, there's been goalie fights too.
Goalie fights. Well, how do you?
Yep.
They're on opposite sides of the thing. How do they even get to each other?
They leave their nets. If there's a big line brawl, if both teams just go at each other, or if one player is roughing up the other team's goalie, then that goalie will be like, hey, leave my person alone or whatever.
Yeah.
And something like that.
Are there famous goalie fights? Are there duels? Oh, yeah. Who has fought famously?
I believe it was Patrick Waugh again.
Okay.
He's been in a few famous instances of goalie history. He got in a fight with, I believe it was either Mike Vernon or Chris Osgood. It was a Detroit goalie, I'm pretty sure, because those teams had a big rivalry for a few years.
Yeah.
But there's been a few. There's a few goalies that have reputations as being a hothead, and so they'll. Jonathan Quick is one of those goalies. He's also a goalie that's known for being incredibly acrobatic and making just basically flinging his body around.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And his real name is Quick. Because
it is.
That's very funny.
And if you saw the way that he moves, it's not actually that inaccurate.
Right, because he's flinging himself around. And so there's the goalies that get into fights. Do they ever get into if a goalie gets into a fight, do they get put in that box where there's no goalie?
No, the goalies can't serve the penalty. Somebody that was on the ice at the time has to serve it for them.
And it's not considered being on the ice, being a goalie.
It is, but the goalie, because the teams only get 2 goalies each. If both goalies ended up in the penalty box, they would have no one protecting their net, and there has to be a goalie. So they just make one of the skaters. This
is a free for all. Then the goalies can act up, and then one of the. Do hockey players like the penalty box? Is it a place to get a breather? I would think.
It can be. It kind of depends, I guess, on the situation. Sometimes if 2 players are kind of scuffling, the referee will just give them both a penalty and say, you both go and cool down for a bit. But there have been instances, and there's been pictures, there's been video, where if a game gets really, really out of hand, the penalty boxes will end up with 10 players in each of them, and they're standing on the they're just like crowded in there, and like sometimes they'll yell at each other through the glass. And
Wait, are they
the whole thing.
separated in the penalty box, or are they all
yeah,
just...
there's 2 penalty boxes.
There's 2 penalty boxes, but what if there's 4 people that need penalties?
Each penalty box is for one team or the other. So
so it's the same.
Because if they put them in the penalty box together, they would just keep fighting.
That's what I was like. Then they're just going to beat each other up in a box. Okay, so they're for each team. That makes much more sense. Thank you very much. But the goalies can't do it. They can't be given a penalty box. They can be given a penalty probably where they're like, the other team, you acted up. The other team now gets a free kick or a free shot at the other. At the
they get a power play is what it's called. So basically, you get a penalty and you play one player short for 2 minutes or longer. There's a funny little phrase in hockey. They say, "Oh, you get 2-minute penalty for you can't do that."
And right, exactly. But do they have that whole thing where they get to where it's just face off of a goalie and a hockey and a person from the team? Do they do
like
that?
a shootout?
A shoot,
or a penalty shot? Yeah.
Do they do that?
Yeah. So that used to be more rare, but how many years ago has it been now? They changed again. They're always changing some of the rules, but never the ones that we want to be changed.
You're going to have to tell me what rule you would like to be changed.
Yes, I can get to that in a moment. So a few years back, they made a change. They changed the point system, and they changed it so that the way that a game normally works in hockey is that they play 3 periods, and if the score is tied, they play an overtime. And then it used to be that if still the score is tied at the end of overtime, then you were tied, and that was just it. But they decided, like, no, somebody has to win every game, so we'll do overtime. And if it's still tied, then we go to a shootout now. So it's a back and forth, one shooter at a time, and the goalie has to try to stop them. And whichever team, there's a little bit of like rules to it I won't get into, but basically they settle ties ultimately with shootouts now, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but it's a mixture in the hockey community, like and dislike.
Interesting, because with the ties, I think there's ties in soccer, right? Football, and then there's some sort of chart, and it all becomes, a series of math problems to figure out who's actually in the lead because of the number of ties you have and all these things. But that is not how they're doing it now. Now they've just changed it to, let's just do a shootout. Whoever gets the first score, like if the first person to hit the shoot, if the first team makes that, and then the other team has a chance to make it up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they go back and forth. So I think the way that it works is let's say Toronto scores in the shootout and they're playing Minnesota, because those are my 2 teams.
Okay.
And then if Minnesota scores again, then it basically it's a wash and they kind of start over. So I think you have to actually score twice and your opponent not match that to actually win.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So we are at an hour. So what I would love you to do is to tell me, first of all, what rule did you want to be changed? Let's do that.
Yeah, there's a couple that kind of come to mind, and I'm stealing someone else's idea here, but there's a thing in hockey called offside, and there's a thing called icing, and they're similar ideas. Offside is when you skate into the opponent's zone without the puck, like if it comes in afterwards, because you have to take it in with you. And I've heard people suggest, like, just get rid of that. Just let them skate freely, because it'll create more interesting play situations and probably more goals. And then icing is when you shoot the puck all the way down the ice and just like basically, just here, you guys take it. And because again, it's kind of like in basketball, you're supposed to actually like take the ball with you where you're going. You can't just like throw it to the other end of the court and then go get it. So
keep talking, by the way. The dog is panicking.
Okay. So icing is like, when you just throw the puck to the other end of the ice and then go get it, so you're not carrying it with you. And I've heard people say, and I would tend to agree, that if they got rid of icing, if they just made it that you could just like shoot the puck anywhere, anytime, and just go get it, I think that would open up the game. It would make it even faster, which is hard to imagine because it's already a very fast game. But I think, some of the rules to do with goalies I'd probably also change, but I don't want to get too deep into it.
Well, what would it be? What would a goalie rule?
So there's actually a rule, and it's actually Martin Brodeur's fault. So he's coming up again. It's called the Brodeur rule unofficially, and it's because he used to be so good at going out of the net and getting the puck and being like a third defenseman, basically. He was so good at stick handling. And the league decided they didn't like it, and so they made a trapezoid shape behind the net, and that's the only place that goalies are allowed to play the puck aside from in their crease. So it really limits what they're able to do, and it makes it, they're basically just like the save machine, and that's kind of it now. And I would like to see them given a bit more freedom again.
Yeah. It's you're like, oh well, he was really good at it. I'm sorry. We're gonna make that against the law because he's actually quite good at that.
Yeah, and we're punishing you for being too good.
Yeah. It's maybe everyone else gets a little bit better, because it's interesting how the games do change. With sort of, there is a game in Australia called Australian Football League, the AFL, right? And it's a rugby sort of looking ball, but you have to dribble it, and you kick it. And wherever somebody catches it, that's where it's been moved. And then you kick it in between the posts. And there's 4 posts. There's 2 high ones and then 2 little ones on the outside of each of, one little one on the outside of each of the 2 main ones. And you get one amount of points if you kick it through the middle 2, and then a different version if you kick it through a big one and a little one on either side. And there used to be this huge thing because when you catch the ball, nobody can touch you. So there used to be this huge thing where they would launch off of each other, the people playing, where someone would set their knee and the other guy, in cleats, no doubt, would run, and they're wearing shorts, would run and sort of like in Wonder Woman shield kind of situation, where they would step on that person's thigh and then launch themselves into the sky. They were called speckies because they were spectacular catches. And the weird thing is, and the game wasn't quite so tackly and football-y, as the dudes in the last 20 years have gotten more buff and steroided out, there's less and less of those jumps. And that was the thing that I really liked about Australian rules football. And it's interesting that I'm talking about a sport ball, but there it is. But so do you think, because hockey is obviously has hockey changed physically? Are the hockey players bigger? Are they faster? Are they stronger?
They're all of those things, yeah. The game does change because as new players come in, they'll invent new techniques, or just different things will kind of happen, and the game slowly evolves bit by bit, and eventually, the rule makers have to kind of make new rules to kind of keep up. Yeah,
to adjust with the fact that these guys are. Does the skating change, or is it just faster?
I know that there are skating techniques because I've heard the term edge work said, which I guess is about how you skate in a certain kind of situation. And there's definitely things I've heard about more efficient skating styles and techniques. So, that's the main thing is that scorers are really kind of pushing the game ahead because they're finding new ways and different ways to score and beat the goalies. And so the goalies are having to come up with new techniques and new positioning to try and, defend against that. Right,
because I'm sure they're like, hey, nobody ever noticed. They'll watch the films and they're like, they're not protecting the ice level, which is why that butterfly thing got invented, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was another thing, another technique, if I can just quickly explain this one. So there was a thing that they called the VH, which literally stands for vertical horizontal. It's a very uncreative name, but it had to do with how the goalie would position themselves against the post when the player was in the corner at the side of the net. And they did this, but then they found there was a weakness in it that the players discovered, and they started to exploit it. And so they created the reverse VH, which literally just kind of means flipping their legs the opposite way. And so it protected against the original weakness, but it kind of also created a new weakness of its own.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's awesome.
So, yeah.
Well, here's the thing about goalies. We could talk about them forever, but here we are at an hour. By the way, it's Lacey Artemis that I'm talking to, Rangers, and you can go to hatcollecting.com, and hatcollecting.com is essentially people wear many hats in their jobs and in their creative lives, and you ask the same questions of every guest to hear different answers because different people have different answers to the same question. Is that correct?
Yeah, so some of the answers end up being pretty similar, but I really enjoy hearing the kind of unique takes to some of the questions for sure.
That's awesome. And then Artemis creates, Artemis as in Artemis, underscore creates, as in creates, is sort of your artistic angle? Is what will people find at Artemis Creates?
So there they will find a lot of like design work that I've done. They will find I've published a short fiction young adult novel last year.
Neat.
So there's that. There is music because you can see a piano and a guitar behind me. I used to be, I say used to because I'm not very active anymore, but I used to make music. And writing because I do everything. So
right.
That's why it's Artemis Creates and not just Artemis Musics or Artemis Writes.
Because then you can do whatever you want. You're like, oh, I'm going to take up watercolor. And right now, it's acrylic painting of a helmet of a goalie. And I look forward to seeing the actual design when that comes out. That'll be awesome. Thank you so much for doing the show, Lacey.
Thank you for having me.
All right. And Rangers, you know the rules out there. Take care of each other.
My hat, my hat, my hat. They're dancing around my hat. My hat, my hat, my hat. Well, what do you think of that? If it looks like a Mexican hat dance and it sounds like a Mexican hat dance, it's most likely a Mexican hat dance. So take off your hat and let's dance.
Yay! Oh my God. Why don't we just call that as the end of the show?